This is a ClearCom Technologies training video on how to remove the CIM module from a 2003 to 2004 Saab 9.3. First of all, let me explain to you the tools that you will need to remove the CIM module. First of all, you will need a Torx T50 bit with a little extension and a ratchet. This is what helps take the steering wheel off. For this particular video, we need a small L-shaped Allen wrench, and this is what we use to pry the spring off so that we can pull off the airbag. And also something like a scratch-all. It's just kind of handy to have in a couple of the steps to be able to perform this service of pulling the airbag, the steering wheel, and the CIM module off. This video is for when you have the airbag release holes behind the steering wheel exposed from the module back here. In other words, if you can take your finger and feel back here behind the airbag and feel a hole on the top and on the bottom of the steering wheel, that means that the airbag holes are exposed and you can use the L-shaped Allen wrench to remove the airbag. I have a spare steering wheel here to show you a good example. If we turn this around, you'll see the airbag release holes right here and right here. There's a big U-shaped spring holding the airbag on. The U-shaped spring extends from here, goes down across the bottom and up over here to the top. All we have to do to release the airbag is insert the Allen wrench on the outside of the spring and pry the spring inward towards the steering column on both sides, and it releases the airbag off of the front. So let me explain this to you a little bit how it works. The first thing I want to do is feel in the back and find the airbag release hole. Once I find it, I can insert the long end of my Allen wrench into the outermost part of the airbag release hole, outermost meaning furthest away from the steering column. And once I have that in place, I wait until I feel the L-shaped Allen wrench bottom out, and I make sure it's on the outside, and I simply pry the end of my Allen wrench in towards the center of the steering column to release the spring. Okay, got the top release there. So now I feel for the bottom hole, insert the Allen wrench as far outside as possible, and I can kind of feel when I have the spring on the end of the wrench because it kind of springs back at me and gives me some tension there. And then I simply pry inward towards the steering column until you can kind of feel the spring come off of the tab and see the airbag lift up towards you just a quarter of an inch or so. At this point, I can tell that the steering wheel has been released off of the spring, and I simply pry around the edges until it comes loose. Now there are 3 wires still connecting the airbag. One here, one here, and one here. This connects to the radio controls, and this just pulls out. This wire here is a ground that I can pull right out. This yellow connector goes to the clock spring, which is connected to the CIM module. And as you can tell, it's very short. It's only a few inches long. So when you first pry out on the airbag, don't try to pull it out too far, or else you could pop this connector loose. The connector has a small tab on the top that you can push down a small tab here that you can push down on and pull out. With those 3 wires loose, the airbag is now free. Now we move to removing the steering wheel. The steering wheel is held on with 1 bolt. That bolt is a T50 bolt. So I simply attach the ratchet until the bolt comes loose. At this point, I simply pull the steering wheel off, and here is the CIM module, this module right here. This is what you need to send in the mail. Now, most important, we need to mark the location of the clock spring. This is the clock spring. This is one of the reasons I use the scratch-all tool. I want to mark 2 locations. Right here is a little moon-shaped hole with a yellow plastic dot. That is the indicator of the location of the clock spring. So I make a little scratch here to show the location of the clock spring indicator, and I want to make a little scratch right here to show the actual location of the clock spring. That way, when the CIM module is returned to you, you know exactly how to reinstall it and in what location it is, to not permanently damage your CIM module. Now we'll proceed to removing the CIM module.
On the CIMs, I find it easier if you release and the CIM pulls out, it telescopes in and out, pull it out as far as it pulls out and then lock it back in place. The next thing we're going to do is remove the bib, and this is just hiding the driver's view from the internal workings of the car. But all I do is I pinch both sides. You pinch it right here and just pull it towards you. It will just unsnap. And what I like to do is I just unsnap it and stretch it right over the CIM. That gets it out of your way. Now, there are 2. I'm going to move this down. I forgot to move it out and down. So we're going to move it down so we can get, actually I can grab both hooks. There's 2 big tangs holding the CIM onto the column, and I can pull the bottom one down with my fingers, but the top one I can't get enough leverage on. So I'm going to stick a screwdriver and lift it up, and with that the CIM has pulled away, and the only thing holding the CIM to the car now is the harness. And all you do is you pull out on this little maroon connector. I'm going to use a screwdriver just to get it started. After I've got it started, I'm going to pull on it with my fingers, and it ejects, and the CIM is now off of the car. Here are the 2 tangs that were holding it to the column, so those simply get pulled out to release them from their resting points on the column.
With the CIM module removed from the vehicle, we want to prepare it for shipping. First thing we do is tape the clock spring into place. Just a couple pieces of tape on there. Secure it down so that it won't move during shipping. Then, to remove the shroud, we simply pull and wiggle just like we did to remove it off of the dashboard. Both sides just pop right off. And the final thing we need to do is remove the wiper arm and blinker arm. If you look on the underside, there's a small release hole on both of the arms. And if I grab my scratch-all again and come in on that release hole at about a 45-degree angle from the rear, it presses down on a tab and the arm pulls right out. At this point, the CIM is ready to ship this is exactly what we need to be able to make you a new key. So simply wrap it in a couple of layers of bubble wrap. And stick it in a box slightly larger than the CIM itself. You can fill in any empty spaces with either packing peanuts or crushed paper. And finally, on the website, you can print off our order form and fill it out with your ship to address and phone number and put it in the box with the CIM module. That way, when it arrives, we know exactly where it came from and where it needs to go and who to contact.